Boxing Truth here. Wanted to talk a little bit about Artur Beterbiev, who recently had his comeback, his first fight in about a year since shoulder surgery that sidelined him for much of 2015. He recently returned this past Saturday night on the first PBC on ESPN in his hometown, where he had a showcase bout. I didn't do a fight review for the fight because you saw what you saw. It was a mismatch showcase, just a get back fight for Beterbiev, as he was out for close to a year. But what's funny was that his opponent, Maradona, whatever his name is, from Argentina, I believe, he was actually coming in even a longer layoff, about close to 13 months, and he was a super middleweight for the majority of his career. He was campaigning at super middleweight, and he lost to two guys in Thomas Ufsin and Edwin Rodriguez, and didn't really had any significant fights at light heavyweight. Was pretty much mostly a super middleweight his entire career, and it was a light work for Beterbiev, who showed his power, his strength, that he's a very physical guy, and he easily dispatched Maradona in 4 rounds, knocking him down multiple times. Maradona pretty much just caved in and waved at his corner to throw the white flag or the towel in order to stop the massacre that was going on in the ring, as Beterbiev just made easy work of him. And what was a trash main event that PBC and the Heyman brought to the public. It was their first show since the ESPN schedule was pushed back. It was supposed to debut this year in April. They were supposed to have shows in April, but it was pushed back to June, and this is what they brought you. It's disappointing. Like, I understand that Beterbiev has been off for a year and he needed a tune up to shake off some rust, but does it really have to be on the main event of an ESPN type slot? I mean, shouldn't those slots go to more worthy bouts, more quality type bouts that you didn't get from ESPN last night? It was not very interesting, very one-sided. Maradona didn't put up any resistance, and you saw what you saw, so there was really no reason to do a review for that fight, as the PBC is continuing to present trash to the boxing public, as it's not getting any better. Just look at ESPN's next show on July 21st. You got the two Ukrainians featured on that show in Kitrov and Sergey Davidenko. But I'm hearing the main event for that is going to be Sam Sulaiman. And, Sulaiman's over 40 years old. Don't really need to see him on television anymore. It's just another slot that's just wasted. A main event that just doesn't really interest myself and many boxing fans. But it is what it is. NBC also has a card coming up on June 18th, which features a fanfare showcase. Just more these type of fights where the quality's not really there, not really in there with suitable dance partners. Just pretty much the A side is gonna beat the B side. Just guys, the B side is just an opponent coming in to lose. But for Beterbiev, when it comes to his career, now that he's back, his shoulder surgery, he's recovered now. He looked pretty strong in the fight. Granted, he wasn't in there with much resistance. But it's interesting what his team is saying about his future, as they're targeting Sergey Kovalev for early next year or sometime in 2017. Now, what's interesting in the article I read was that they're going to push for final eliminators in 2 organizations, where they say they'll get the shot, an immediate shot. This is according to the article, and this is according to, I believe it was his trainer, Mark Ramsey, who said this. Someone from his team. They're going to start gunning for the final eliminators for the WBA in the WBO that Sergey Kovalev currently holds. Now, in those organizations, those sanctioning bodies, Beterbiev is ranked number 7 by the WBO, I believe, and he's rated number 4 by the WBA. He's also rated number 4 by the WBC, and he's actually rated higher by the IBF compared to all those other sanctioning bodies. He's rated number 2 in the IBF, so why is he not pushing for a final eliminator in that sanctioning body? Well, it's pretty obvious, because the number 1 contender for the IBF is Andre Ward, and Beterbiev is advised by Heyman, and Heyman and Rock Nation have yet to do business in the boxing world, so that's out of the question. They're not going to push for a final eliminator for Andre Ward. Besides, Ward and Kovalev are already on a collision course to meet later this year, so that's not happening. So Beterbiev is going to push for a final eliminator, either the WBA pretty much, because he's actually rated higher. He's rated number 4, and in WBO he's rated number 7. And what's interesting is that potentially he could push for a final eliminator, and the opponent could actually be Fanfare, and the winner of that fight can determine who becomes the mandatory for the WBA. And it's also the same scenario for the WBC, because Fanfare is rated higher in both those sanctioning bodies, the WBC and the WBA, to Beterbiev. So if Beterbiev is going to push a final eliminator, then potentially it could be against Fanfare to determine the number 1 contender for those sanctioning bodies. But it doesn't seem like Beterbiev's team is pushing for a shot at Adonis Stevenson. They're trying to go after Kovalev and try to enforce a mandatory to put Kovalev into a position to perhaps go to a purse bid, as Beterbiev has been fighting mostly on PBC cards. His last 3 events have been on PBC. There hasn't been any indication that he could fight outside that network or whatever the platform that he's fighting on, CBS, ESPN. I believe he's been featured on Spike. But it's interesting that they're not pushing for the WBC shot, since they're rated very high. He's rated number 4. He would have to potentially fight Fanfare for the mandatory slot, as Fanfare is rated number 2. Fanfare has a fight coming on the 18th. It seems like a safe opponent that he's fighting. Guy is not world level, hasn't fought anybody on the world class level, so that seems like a showcase bout from what I see as Fanfare's next opponent in Joe Smith on the 18th on NBC. But the plan, according to Beterbiev's team, is to fight 2 more times this year. Shake off some rust, perhaps maybe another showcase, or maybe a better opponent his next fight, and then push for a final eliminator at the end of the year, win that fight, and then become the mandatory challenger to one of Kovalev's belts for either WBA or the WBO, as the IBF is out of the question because Andre Ward's rated number 1. It's a fight I'd like to see, of course, potentially, yes. Beterbiev and Kovalev, there's a lot of history there. Beterbiev has already had 2 victories in the amateurs. Kovalev will argue that both fights were very close, could have gone either way. Beterbiev had his chance at Kovalev last year, but his team turned it down because they knew, they didn't want that work, and they knew Beterbiev wasn't ready for Kovalev at that time. He still ain't ready right now. He still needs to shake off some rust, get back in the ring, get some rounds in, and start fighting more suitable opponents compared to his last foe, who was a super middleweight. But it's going to be interesting to see when Beterbiev steps up, when he fights more worthy opponents, contenders. Fanfare is a damn good fight. I like to see it. I want to see how Beterbiev could do against a seasoned opponent like Fanfare, who's really come a long way the past few years, was a prospect, had some tough bouts, but was able to pull through in some of these fights, had good fights against Stevenson, showed his worth against Cleverly. knocked out Chavez Jr. as he was the underdog in that bout. So that'll be a good fight for both guys. And Beterbiev, it'll be his first big step-up fight, because you look at the resume, he's mostly been fighting faded guys, super middleweights. He hasn't really fought the quality of opponents to see where he's at in his career and if he's the real deal. But when you watch him fight, he's very strong. He looks the part. He's very physical in that ring. Has a different style compared to a Kovalev. Beterbiev is more physical. He brings a lot of physicality to the ring, and he tries to break you down with his power and his physical strength. And Kovalev is more of a boxer. But if Beterbiev can get through these fights, in an eliminator and against a better opponent, it's just going to make that fight even more intriguing. Whatever happens with Kovalev Ward, still those guys still have to win interim bouts in the summer for that fight to materialize. But that's the plan for Beterbiev. He's going to try to go after Kovalev, his amateur rival. There is it's definitely a little personal there. I'm a little surprised. I would think that Beterbiev will go after Stevenson, since they both share the same advisor, but I guess Stevenson told Heyman to protect him. And now Beterbiev's team is going after Kovalev and trying to push for a mandatory shot, which can put pressure on Kovalev, since he has an exclusive deal with HBO. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But Beterbiev is back. A showcase win, his last fight, easy work against Maidana, the Argentine fighter. Hopefully Beterbiev's team can get him back a lot sooner than later. Maybe in September, then get another fight in December, possibly against Fonfara. That'd be a good fight. And then maybe we'll perhaps get to see Beterbiev against his rival Sergey Kovalev. If Kovalev can keep doing what he's doing and winning and continue on his winning ways, for perhaps a very intriguing bout in 2017. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.